Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's live Q&A. I have Lana Dingwall here. Welcome, Lana.
Oh, welcome. Well, welcome to everyone who's watching early
Um,
on a Monday morning.
yeah, well, I don't know what time it is for most people, but for us, it's 9 a.m. So
Yeah.
it's bright and early, good start to the week. But it's kind of the perfect start to the week for a lot of people because Lana is a business coach and the girl has a knack for lighting a fire under people's butts.
Yeah, yeah.
And so today she's going to be talking us through, the common struggles people have and the mindset issues that people have that are blocking them from starting businesses. So before we dive into that, Lana, can you just give us a little background of who you are, what you do, how people might or might not know you?
Yeah, definitely. So my name's Lana Dingwall. Not a very common name. So you can search me on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, and my website's just lanadingwall.com as well if you want to know a little bit more about me. But I do business coaching, which for a lot of people, sometimes they don't quite understand what that means. So I help people both tactically with strategy, marketing, sales, lead generation, all that kind of stuff that it takes to grow a business and attract your ideal clients and customers. But I also help people with realistically the mindset blocks that are holding them back, because let's be real, we like to think that the external world is holding us back from living out our hopes and dreams, but in reality, we're just holding ourselves back. So I'm really looking forward to getting to talk with people today, because one of my favorite things to do is to actually, encourage people to start their own business. If that's something that you genuinely want to do, if you want to be an entrepreneur, whether it be through calligraphy or anything else, I love having conversations with people and really inspiring them to actually live out their dreams, because why not you? Why not you? Why can't you start a business? Why can't you do what Becca's doing? Becca's just a human. She's wearing sweatpants right now.
I sure am. And so is Lana.
I
Just
am too.
before we got on the camera, Lana was like, I'm all like business on top, but I'm wearing sweatpants. And I was like, me too.
I love it. That's a perk, right? To running your own business, is you don't actually have to get fully dressed up.
Yeah, so good. And so just before we dive into stuff, there's a couple other things that you didn't mention about yourself. You have a podcast that I would love to point people to as well, because it's great and all along the lines of what we're talking about today. So where can people find that?
So you can find it pretty much anywhere where you can get a hold of a podcast, and it's called Changing the Story, Kick-Ass Women in Business. And if you forget, again, you can just search my name, Lana Dingwall, and it'll come up. And Becca's actually on it. And I think your interview is actually it works very well with what we're talking about today, because you talked about how you actually built your business so that you could quit your day job, but also travel the world. So you give away a lot of really great tips and strategies in that for as well. So if anyone hasn't heard Becca talking about that, you can check out that episode on Changing the Story, because it's great. And obviously Becca's great. So
And once we're off this talk, I'll put a link directly to that one to help people out too. And then the other part about you that you didn't mention, and maybe because you still feel weird about it, but I think it's amazing, is
I am also an international best-selling author. So that's something we'll talk a little bit about today, is that idea too of like kind of being an imposter and not really feeling like you can own something that you have. So yeah, this year I became an international best-selling author in a book called Women Who Influence. My story is called Changing the Story. And the whole idea with my podcast and with the book, and realistically with what I'm talking about today, is it's changing the story we tell ourselves about who we are and what we are and are not capable of in the world. Because if we can change how we talk to ourselves, we can like literally do anything that we want, because again, the only person ever stopping us or preventing us from moving forward in our life is ourselves. So I'm looking forward to that. So thank you for prompting me, because I also just always forget. Just forget about those things.
well, I think both of those things are so awesome, and they are obviously going to be helpful to the people who are listening too. So check out the podcast and the book and just everything Lana has to say. But I think we should just jump right in and start tackling all these mindset issues.
Yeah. And so anyone, if you're seeing me looking down, it's just because my notes are on my phone and my phone keeps closing. And okay, so before I get into anything, I kind of want to ask anyone listening, whether it be live or on replay, I want to ask you two questions. And I want you to think about the answer to these questions, and whatever your answer is, like, use that as we move through what we're talking about today. So I want to ask you, what would you do if you knew that you had absolutely no possibility of failing? So if you were guaranteed that whatever it is that you did, you would succeed at, and not only would you succeed at it, but you'd like smash it out of the park. So if you wanted to become someone who does calligraphy full time and is just like Becca and runs workshops and travels the world, and you're also like a gazillionaire and you have like 30 cars because for some reason you really like cars and you go on vacation all the time, like if that's the life that you want, I want you to think about that as we move through. Because again, the question is like, what would you do if you had absolutely no chance of failing? So you knew that succeeding in whatever it is you wanted to do was 100% guaranteed. And the reason I want to ask you that question is a lot of the times we limit ourselves from actually thinking about what do we want in our life. And for business even, like what would my life look like if I were to run my business? Because we get so hung up on why we don't think we have what it takes, or we let reality set in and we say like, that's just not a realistic dream. And even Becca, like your dad, I'm pretty sure if I'm remembering back to the podcast episode, when you told your dad you were going to like quit your stable, good income job to do calligraphy, he thought you were crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I always like to preface this by saying that my dad is very supportive. He's always been very supportive, but it was like when I started doing calligraphy, he was like, oh, that's a nice hobby, but like, keep your education and the job you worked your education for. And, don't leave that stable day job because it's probably a fad and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, Dad, but like, let me prove you wrong.
Yeah. Well, and the idea too is when people say things like that to us, they're not trying to like crush our hopes and dreams. They're trying to keep us safe. And they in the moment, they feel like they have our best interests at heart. And they're telling us whatever it is that we need to hear so that we don't go and ruin our lives. And I think the cool thing even with that story is, again, you might not have asked yourself, what would I do if there was no possibility of failing and if I was guaranteed success? But you could have also listened to him and said like, yeah, like this might be a fad, or yeah, like, can I really make money doing this? Is it really worth giving up all this stability that I've worked my whole life for and all the money I invested in my education? And again, most of us don't actually go after our dreams. And it doesn't have to be business, but particularly in business, we don't actually go after creating this thing that we want because we've already convinced ourselves that we're going to fail, or we've already convinced ourselves that it's not going to work out. And so we tell ourselves, you know what, it's just better to stay safe. It's better to stay where I am, stay within my comfort zone. But the problem is like, none of you would be watching this live. None of you would be in this group. And none of you would be like experiencing the amazingness that is Becca and her community if she didn't decide to be like, you know what, but what if I succeed? And what if this isn't a fad? And what if I can actually make a go of this? And I want you to think about that. You can be Becca because Becca's a human, right? I'm sure you'd admit that you're a human.
Yeah. Pretty close.
A human with bad jokes, as you like to say. And so the important thing is recognizing too, even with people like Becca is no different than you. She's just already started. And there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be doing what she's doing, or again, a variation of whatever it is she's doing based on what you actually want for your life. All you have to do is take that first step the way that Becca did. And so today,
there were a lot of people who were where I am when I wanted to start that I was looking at being like, oh, I'll never be as big or bigger than them. Like, why would I even start or try to compete with them? And I think we're going to touch on saturated markets a little bit later, but
and too, like even for you, I was confirming before. So you've been running this business, like you've been doing it full time for 1.5 years, but you've been doing it for 3 years. So another thing too, to remember when we look at people that we really idolize and who we look up to, it's about also recognizing that you can't judge your chapter like 1 to Becca's chapter 13. Becca has been in business for 3 years. She's done a lot of stuff. She's had a lot of growth. She's pushed herself a lot. So don't compare yourself by being like, she didn't do it overnight. It happened in 3 years. So, and even that 1.5 years of it was on the side before you actually took it full time. And that's super normal. Like that's a very common story. So again, don't look so far ahead in someone else's journey and use that as like proof as to why you shouldn't start, because you could never be that person, because everybody started exactly where you are right now, which is just not knowing what to do, kind of having inkling that you want to try something, but really just being like, is this for me? Is this not for me? And so I'm going to go through some of the most common ways or reasons why people don't actually start their business. And so if you resonate with anything that I'm saying, also know that I'm going to also like disprove that as to why it shouldn't be a reason that you should not start your business. So just be prepared. I want you to start your business. And that's what the whole point of today's video is. So
wait, Lana, wait. You said you had 2 questions to ask people. The first one was, what would you do if you didn't, if you knew you couldn't fail? But what was the second one?
Oh, and what would you do if you knew everything you wanted was guaranteed?
Okay.
So same question, just like sometimes different perspectives, people like to think of it differently. So again, yeah, what would you do if you knew there was no possibility of failing? And what would you do if you knew that absolutely everything that you wanted was guaranteed? Because again, that's kind of like what you want your life to actually be. You're just preventing yourself from doing it right now. So too many notifications popping on my phone. So some of the main reasons why people don't start their businesses, I'll just get the logistics aspect out of it right away, like where people feel like, oh, I don't know anything about registering my business or taxes or marketing, like all that kind of stuff. I just want to acknowledge that unless you like go to business school or unless you have somebody really close in your life who is an expert at business, nobody knows the answers to those things. And that's totally okay. That not knowing any of that stuff or sort of feeling like a fish out of water when it comes to all the logistical parts starting a business, that's very normal and very common. So it's not a reason for you not to start. It's not a reason for you to justify like why you don't have what it takes or you're not capable of handling what you need to do logistically on the back end, the admin reasons. Because you can also hire people to do stuff. Like nobody wants me to do my own taxes because I would screw them up. So I hire somebody. And again, even in that vein, starting a business, especially if you're going to start a calligraphy business, you can just register as a sole proprietor. If you're in Canada, it would be a sole proprietor. I know in the States, they have similar language, but anywhere, like if you register as an individual and not a corporation, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars every year on filing your taxes and all that kind of stuff. And you can, as your business grows, you can look at, incorporating. And it's totally okay if you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, because again, it doesn't matter. Everything is on Google and you can look it up. And there's a lot of people, I bet you, even in this group that you could ask, hey, how did you start your calligraphy business? What were the steps that you took? Here's the country I live in. And people are going to give you the answer. So just also when it comes to business logistics, no question is a dumb question. So ask. Everybody else has been in the same boat as you before, where they had absolutely no idea what they were doing and they screwed up multiple times before they figured it out. So it's okay. Be kind with yourself, be patient, and reach out for support. You don't have to know how to do everything in your business. And I would never recommend that you try and do everything because it's very overwhelming. If it's not your zone of genius, you don't have to do it. So I'm just going to push that one out, because the other reasons why most people don't start their businesses are more psychological. And so you might be saying things like, I'm not good enough. So you might look at Becca or other people in your group who are doing stuff and you think there's absolutely no way that I could be as good as them. So I'm not even going to try. And it's recognizing that, like, well, I know, Becky, because your background is in interior design, correct? So you had some like clean handwriting skills for sure. But everything, like there was a point in your life where you had absolutely no idea how to even spell your name. Somebody had to teach you to spell your name. And obviously this is going way back. But none of us know how to do anything until someone teaches us and until we practice and we do it over and over and over again. And we intentionally try and improve that skill. So if you do feel that you're just not good enough of a calligrapher to run workshops or to, even decorate Christmas ornaments, whatever it is that you want to do, just know that it's okay if you don't feel like you're good enough. One, you most likely are, because I wish I could show you guys my calligraphy right now. I was in a video that Becca did and no one was going to show my calligraphy on video because it's so bad. And so recognizing too that you actually are really good. And the reason why you're better than the average person is, think of it this way too. You're in a group that specializes in calligraphy. You're in a group that specializes in helping people improve. So you're comparing yourself to other people who are in that group who are also passionate about calligraphy and who also maybe have natural talents in calligraphy writing. But in reality, the average person sucks at calligraphy. And so it's true though, that most people suck at calligraphy. You're just in a group.
I've seen someone describe this as the bubble of awesomeness too.
Yes.
And so, and especially as it relates to Instagram, like if you think about it, like you have an account that is following 100 or 200 or 700 other people doing exactly what you want to do. So you're in this bubble of awesomeness where all you're seeing is that. But if you grab your best friend's phone or someone who has nothing to do with calligraphy's phone and you look at their Instagram, they wouldn't even have this little tiny thought that there might be calligraphy on Instagram. And so, and I noticed this a lot when I was traveling. I would meet new people and they'd say, what do you do? And I'd say calligraphy. And they would just like blank stare, have no idea what calligraphy
Yeah.
even is. To me, it's like everybody and their mother is doing calligraphy, but to the average person, they're like, what is calligraphy? So
Exactly.
that is something huge to think about for sure.
No, yeah, because and that's the thing, we always forget that like there's a world outside of whatever it is that we're doing, outside of our interests. And you do want to surround yourself with other people who are really good at the thing that you want to be doing or that you are doing, not so that you can compare yourself and make yourself feel like crap, and not so that you can judge the other person, but just so that you can use that as a challenge to be like, oh, like I can improve, I can get better, or how did that person do that? Like I'm going to ask them, and mentor some, again, to also recognizing that to somebody else, you are an expert. And this is the biggest thing too, because you're in that bubble of awesomeness. You're recognizing that you guys are experts at calligraphy. Like the average person cannot do calligraphy. I'm not writing, like, I don't even like writing handwritten notes to people because that's how messy my handwriting is. And a lot of people are like me. A lot of people don't like their handwriting. And a lot of people though value and find beauty in calligraphy, and they would pay money to have someone write things for them, or pay money to have something like that's written really beautifully in their home. Because again, there's so many different ways that you can start a calligraphy business. You don't have to teach calligraphy, and you don't have to do exactly what Becca does. Like I know a lot of people who, they make wooden signs and they use calligraphy, or people who make ornaments, or people who do like wedding invitations. Like the like realm of possibility is endless for you. So first, it is knowing you are good enough and you're way better than you're giving yourself credit for, and that the average person skills are nowhere close to yours. So you are good enough, which kind of leads me into the next one, which is no one would pay me for my work. And that's a big thing too, especially in the realm of like being an artist, or when we're doing something that we feel is more artistic. There's this kind of idea in society that there's like, the starving artist, and all the mindset stuff that comes with, oh, you're going to be an artist. Okay, well, I hope you're like ready to struggle. And there are countless people out there in the world who are artists full time, who make a lot of money, who make more money than the average person. And so for you, I want to recognize that you can, and people do get paid for calligraphy. And you're like, I'm at least can see Becca, so I'm looking at one of them. Like Becca gets paid for her work. So again, why not you? If Becca's getting paid for her work, and I know a lot of other people who are getting paid for their work for calligraphy or other types of like artistic stuff, and people get paid for it. So again, why not you? And it just really, and that just boils down to, again, like a marketing and sales strategy that you have so that you can actually attract people who are going to pay you. But if you don't know anyone in your immediate life that wouldn't pay you for your services, that's okay, because they're also not the market of people that you're actually trying to attract, or the market of people that would pay you. And in all honesty, part of that might be because they know you. Sometimes too, when we know somebody, we don't actually value their skill set to its full like intention or its full ability, just because we're like, oh, that's my friend and I've known her my whole life, so I don't understand like why that's a big deal. And that's just because they've been seeing it over and over. So just know that people will pay you for your work regardless of what other people tell you. And then the second one, it's just like, I can't make money doing this. So this is another thing. People think like, oh, well, I can totally get like a wedding here or there, or I could run a workshop here or there, but I can't actually create a whole business where I don't have to have a day job to supplement my lifestyle. And again, that's not true. Look at Becca. And I don't mean this in a mean way to you, Becca, but Becca's not special. She's not like this insanely special person. She's just somebody who has a lot of skill, who has worked really hard to acquire those skills, and then took the risks and pushed herself outside of her comfort zone to create this business. And again, where she is today is not where she was when she started. Like, and I'm going to ask you, Becca, like when you started calligraphy, like, can you just give like a little bit of your story of kind of like before you actually were like, oh, I'm going to try and make a business out of this?
Yeah, I just wanted a creative outlet. I was working full time and I was kind of bored creatively, and I took a workshop and I loved it and I got obsessed with it. And then I started posting pictures of me doing calligraphy on like my personal Instagram and my personal Facebook, and my friends were kind of like, what the hell is this? Like, first of all, it's not very good. And second of all, like, why is she posting all this stuff all the time? And so then I decided to make an Instagram account just for that. And that's when the Happy Ever Crafter started. But if you scroll all the way back down to the bottom of that Instagram account, it's pretty bad. And I wasn't meaning to make it a business. I just thought I was doing it to save my friend's sanity. And because I wanted to follow like 500 other calligraphers, and I didn't want to do it on my personal account. So that's how it started for me.
That's fair. And for a lot of people, that is actually how they fall into their business. We had this idea that people who are entrepreneurs and run their own business, they grow up wanting to run a business. They grow up being like, this is what I'm going to do. Like most people probably thought that you always knew you were going to be a calligrapher, and it's something you've always done in your life. And again, in reality, it's just, you had this moment where you're like, I really like this thing, and I'm just gonna go with it, versus telling myself like, nah, like this is stupid. And you just kept doing that. Like you kept your intuition, or whatever it is you want to believe in, just kept telling you like, try this, try this, try this. And you were just open to that possibility. Because in reality, we don't actually know who we are or who we could become. We only know who we've been and what we've done. But in reality, most things that we've done, and even the person we become 5 years ago, you couldn't even have imagined that person or doing the things that it is that you're doing now. So recognize too that you might not be able to grasp, like, I can't imagine what my life would look like in 10 years from now if I was doing calligraphy full time. And that's okay, but it's about not shutting yourself off to that possibility, because you don't know who you're going to be. You don't know what it is that you're going to become. So don't cut yourself short just because you're like scared, or just because somebody in your life told you that that was a dumb idea. Like you are in a group of people who know that calligraphy is super awesome. So just keep doing it. And then the next thing is, a lot of reasons why people don't start is because there are so many other people doing what I'm doing. So this market is saturated, and there's absolutely no way that I can make money. And again,
Lana, we actually got a question submitted along these lines. So I just want to read it to you, because I think it's exactly what you're going to talk about.
Okay.
So it was from Shakti, and she asked how you deal with saturated markets, but her exact words were, what are your thoughts regarding starting a calligraphy business in an area that already has 3 or 4 amazing calligraphers that have been in business for decades? I live in such an area, and I worry that the market is too saturated. Why would somebody choose me, a newbie, over someone who is well-known, has made many fonts, and over 15 years of experience?
So that's a really good question. So thank you for asking. There's a lot of different ways to approach this question. So one, I don't really believe in oversaturated markets. The reason being is a market is only oversaturated if every single person is going after the exact same type of client or customer. And in reality, even if there's 4 or 5 people in your area who offer this service, your personality is different. So you hopefully attract a different type of person, or your style of calligraphy is a little bit different. And again, recognizing that sometimes when we look at, oh, I'm just a newbie, so who would want to work with me? Other newbies, because for some people, you being in the beginning stages of your business and your journey might make it easier for them to see themselves in you. So they're more inclined to follow your work and want to work with you, versus the extreme intimidation of someone that's been in business for 15 years that they feel like would never be able to relate to someone like them that's just starting off on this and doesn't know what they're doing. And so a lot of it too is people don't always want a super expert person, because sometimes that super expert person just seems so unrelatable, or they're also so expensive that they could never afford to work with that person anyway at this stage. And so it isn't about, Marie Forleo is someone that I really love. And she does like business coaching, and she's somebody that I really admire and look up to. And she calls it like compare Schlager. So it's this idea of, we like to compare ourselves to other people, and we take too many shots and we get a hangover. And then we get into this place of like kind of feeling bad for ourselves, where we're like, this market's too full. There's absolutely no way that I could ever break into it. And so again, recognizing that different people want different stuff, and also recognizing that you have a personality. Like, people follow Becca, I'm sure in part because she is a great calligrapher, but they also follow her for her bad jokes. They follow her mostly for her personality. Like, you guys are in this group over the probably hundreds of thousands, I'm assuming, of calligraphy groups on Facebook or out in the world, but you've chosen to follow Becca over somebody else that has maybe way more experience than her because you resonate with her personality. You love the way that she talks. You love the community that she brings in. There's just something about her that really resonates with you and attracts you to her over somebody else.
And that's not just for people who are trying to grow a community or teach. It's for people, any business, anything. Yes. The more relatable you are, the more somebody can trust you and value your input, the more helpful it is. And I was on a panel last week and someone asked me that question and they said, like, oh, here's what I want to do. Like, how do I stand out? There's all these other people doing it. And actually it's kind of a funny story because he said, his exact words were, I'm a gay Asian and I'm just another average gay Asian who wants to be a makeup blogger. So like, I'm like, first of all, being a gay Asian makeup blogger is not average. I'm like, that's not, so like, there's your thing. Like you got to find that thing and make it like, and go all in on those things. And that's what sets you apart. And so it was just like, as soon as he said it, I was like, you just answered your own question. And I think people need to find those things about themselves. And that's how you deal with saturated markets.
Yeah, because the idea is, again, it's just saturated if everybody's trying to go after the exact same person. So, and even if, and again, it doesn't have to be because you're building a community. It could be because you want to work with businesses and do their storefront windows, or you want to attract wedding clients because you want to do stuff like, again, also in full honesty, like my scope of what calligraphers pay for is small, only because I'm not a calligrapher, right? And so the idea is also the market is only as small as you make it. So if you put blinders on and you tell yourself that the market's only that big, the market's only going to be that big. But if you take those blinders off and you recognize there's actually all these other gaps in services that people want and that people would potentially pay for, I'm going to try that. And I'm sure even Becca, when you started, you didn't think, okay, I'm going to do weddings, I'm going to do storefronts, I'm going to teach classes, I'm going to have a Facebook group, I'm going to make workbooks, I'm going to travel the world. Like the amount of services that you currently offer is not what it was when you first started. Like you created those other services as you started and kept going. And so the idea too with not kind of knowing like, what is my voice or what's my differentiating factor? You can't know that by sitting on your butt. You can only know that by like getting out and playing the game and like, just getting in the field of play and figuring out, oh, okay, people like when I do this. So this is something that I should keep doing. Or, oh, wow, like that thing really resonated with people. I'm going to do more of that. And again, it's not like creating a business isn't like a light switch that you just like turn on and then poof, the lights of your business are on and everything's up and operating. It's just taking one little, sometimes big, but often at the beginning, just little steps at a time of trying to figure out what resonates with people. And also like, who do you want to work with? Because you most likely don't want to work with the same types of people that everybody else in your market works with. You might at the beginning, because you might think, well, they're paying clients or whatever, and so I want to work with them. But the more that you actually investigate and the more that you get curious, like even think about in your friend group, you most likely don't want to date your friends' partners. You think they're cool, but you don't want to date them because they have things about them that just don't jive with you, or you have things about you that just don't jive with them. It's the same thing with attracting clients and building a business. Is not everybody is going to be your ideal client. Not everybody is you're going to want to work with, and not everyone's going to work with you. But there's this whole group of people out there who need you and want what you have to offer, and maybe they don't even know it yet because you haven't started. So just, again, take those steps, put yourself out there, see what works, what doesn't work, and recognize that anyone's business, but again, I'll use you, Becca, as an example. Becca's whole business was built on like one little building block at a time that created this massive calligraphy empire that she has today. And it's just going to be the same thing for you. Just like focus on building one brick at a time. Don't focus on trying to become or replicate exactly what somebody else did. Take the time to figure out who you are, what you're good at, and what resonates with people around you. And that's how you'll start to differentiate yourself long-term in a market that you feel is oversaturated, but in reality actually still has so much untapped potential.
I always also want to mention like embracing the competition in your area. And I always talk about community over competition. So I think most of the people who are in this group know what that means. But when I think about the other calligraphers and the other artists in the area who are doing similar things to me, when I first started out, I made an effort to become friends with them. And I think that's always a good thing to do. And it just became this, like, at the beginning, I was taking on every job, and I didn't really have anything that I was known for wanting to do or not wanting to do. And I actually remember specifically, we had like maybe 5 of us got together, and we all sat down and we said to each other, okay, like what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And so we all kind of knew what everybody's goals were. But I remember at the time being like, I don't know, kind of all of it. Like, I want to do all of it. And then as I kept doing all these jobs, I started realizing what I was good at, what my skills, like my past skills, were bringing to the table, and like making my area of expertise smaller and smaller and smaller. And as you stay in touch with the other artists, and over time, you all kind of get a feel for who is the best at what and who wants to do what. And so even today, I got a request for a job that I knew I wasn't the best for, and that I didn't really want to take on. And I knew exactly who to send that person to. So the more you can embrace that competition and get to know each other, and actually like nail down exactly what it is you want to do versus what the next person wants to do, the better it is for everyone, and the less the saturation even matters.
Yeah, and I think too, like you bring up, because also when you are just taking on whatever work you can, you don't actually have the time or the ability to figure out, what do I really like and what do I specialize in? Because even starting a calligraphy business is so broad. There's so many things that you can do that over time, you're slowly going to narrow down what it is your focus is. You can only do that by actually doing it, like taking the steps. Like, everybody has to start somewhere. And even think about, like, I think too, with the idea of competition, like I definitely believe in community over competition. But what I also love about, so even in my area, like there's a few different business coaches who were like, again, we're very different, but we offer similar services. And I've become friends with them, and like we share clients and like, you know, refer each other if something's outside of our zone of genius. But it also makes me always step up my game, because if I was the only business coach in my area, and I don't work just locally, but you know, if I was the only business coach, period, I would actually probably be a pretty shitty business coach, because I have no reason to try new things. I have no reason to push myself. I have no reason to, you know, improve my skill set, because just like I'm the only one available. And so sometimes when someone's the only one available, we also as individuals don't get to live out our full potential, because we don't have somebody, not that we're comparing ourselves to, but we don't have that person that is making us push ourselves, and who's making us try and become the best person that we can be in our field or within our craft, just because we're the only person. And so too, sometimes it is just about shifting your mindset around competition and realizing that having other people in your area it sucks in the beginning because it feels daunting, but in the long run, it's actually going to make you so much better at what it is that you do. And that's more important than it being easy to start your business when you first start off. So I think too, that's always something that, because for a lot of stuff, it's just like, if you see something as a challenge, how can you actually change your perspective and see that thing as not as a challenge, but as an opportunity, or as a positive thing, or that's something that, again, that in the long run is actually going to help you, versus something that's stopping you from moving forward.
Totally.
Okay, so just going to pull up my next one. And then, yeah, the last one is just like, I don't know where to start. And I mean this not in like the logistical sense, but just in the sense of like, do I have to have a website? Do I have to have an Instagram page? Like what do I actually do? Where do I start? And again, I want you to think about this. It's the same as the logistical part, where what would you do if you knew that there was absolutely no possibility of failing? And what would you do if you knew that you were guaranteed success? And I want you to ask yourself that question. And so if you know you're going to succeed, if you know you're going to hit it out of the park, if you know that your calligraphy business or whatever it is you want to do is going to completely and utterly take off, where do you feel like maybe that first step was? And this is something too I want you to recognize. It's just taking a step. So you might say, oh, I can't run a business until I have a website. That's not really true. Like a lot of people, when they start their businesses just off of Instagram or just off of Facebook, or some people just off of a website. So it's also just about, again, knowing that you just have to take little baby steps. And I would say take the road like where there's the least resistance at the beginning. because you need to create some momentum. Like if there's like a rock and the rock's like, it's like dead, it's stopped, and I'm trying to push it for the first time. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy for me to be able to start to like roll it. But as I start to roll the rock, I have momentum behind me, and it becomes easier and easier and easier for me to keep rolling that rock. And so it's the same thing with building a business and building a successful business. And again, success based on whatever your definition is just start pushing. And as you start pushing, it's going to be easier for you to know, oh, I don't need a website, or, oh, I'm going to offer this thing on Instagram, because you just start to also get in the headspace of running a business. You start meeting other people who are doing it. You start asking them questions. So again, don't get caught up on the fact that you feel overwhelmed by not really knowing where to start. Just start somewhere, because starting somewhere is more important than like starting off correct, because there's no correct way. Just starting is all you have to do. And as you start building that momentum, and as you start trying things in your business, like you start doing Instagram lives, or you start running workshops, as you start doing stuff on Facebook, like as you start things, you'll also start to realize what is and isn't working for you. And also you'll start to realize what you do and do not like, because sometimes we think we're going to like something, and then in reality we hate it. And you can't know that if you don't try. So don't also like feel like you have to build out your whole business before you even start, because you're going to change your mind so many times. Like I have changed my mind so many times in my business, and it's not like in a bad way. It's just because I don't know what I don't know. So I don't even know that something's a possibility, or that I want something, until I'm aware of its existence. And I would never be aware of its existence if I hadn't taken X amount of steps to get to that place where I can see it. So if you don't know where to start, it's also just like ask people in the group, ask Becca, ask whoever. A lot of people have a lot of really great answers, and they can give you a super tactical response. My expert opinion would be, if you want to start a calligraphy business, then focus on Instagram, just because Instagram is so visible or visual. And it's just a place where people go to look at pretty things. So but you don't have to start like a Twitter, a Facebook, a website, an Instagram, and a Pinterest. Like just start with one thing and build out that thing well until you feel comfortable with it, and then add on something else. Yeah.
And even like on that note, I feel like when someone is thinking about starting a business, or using, even just making Instagram the easiest example, is like, well, I can't start my Instagram account yet because I don't know what name I want to use. I don't know what my business name is yet. Or I can't start my Instagram account yet because I don't know what my colors are. So I don't know what colors to have in all my pictures. And I don't know, what photography style I like and how I should. And it's like, you can change your name on Instagram. You can change your colors. You can change all these things. And it doesn't mean that it has to be permanent. So what I've always one of these quotes that's always in the back of my head is, done is better than perfect. So done, that you've made an Instagram account, that you've decided you're going to actually do this for business. And that's better than making it perfect and sitting on it for 2 years because you can't come up with the perfect name.
Yeah. And it's like, even think about, you change so much as a person throughout your life. So think back to when you're in high school, or if you're in high school, think back to like when you're in grade school, and think about like what your favorite band was. Like you probably like lived and breathed that band or that artist or that song, and you were super obsessed with it. And you were like, I'm going to love this music and this artist forever. And then now when you look back, you're like embarrassed by how passionate you were about emo music. That was my thing.
I was going to say, can you take a second and just mention what our things were? Like, who, if you could think of one band, who was it?
Oh, it was Alexis on Fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mine was Hanson.
Okay, yeah. I love
it. Totally opposite of yours, but yeah.
Yeah, well, mine would have been like Hanson, like when I was younger. Spice Girls, like I was absolutely obsessed with Spice Girls when I was young. And then when I was a teenager, it was like, I loved screamo music. And I only think it's funny because now I like just really soft indie acoustic music. and the idea behind that is like, I'm just one person. Like I didn't like suffer a concussion and my personality changed. I just grew and evolved over time. And so my tastes and my interests grew and evolved over time. And the same thing's going to happen in your business. Like you might love your colors when you start out, and you might hate it in the long run. And even for you, even with your business name, like I started my business as like with a name. It was called Arrow Always Moving Forward, which now I hate. I love the tagline, but I hate it because it's so long. It's like a mouthful. But at the time, I thought that it was the best business name ever. And so I got my website, I registered my business, I had all my business cards. Like I was operating my business for like 2.5 years, I think, under that name before I realized like I've outgrown that, and I want to actually have my business be my own name. And so I changed it to my own name. I rechanged all my like branding colors. Like now my brand is so much more me. Whereas when I first started, I won't lie, like I was trying to kind of more conform to what I thought coaching and business coaching was, which was very, inside a certain box and very clean. Whereas now, like I swear all the time, and my color and like my show name has the word ass in it. So, also like as I've grown, I've also realized that I can be more of who I actually am and I don't need to conform. But at the beginning, if I hadn't conformed, I wouldn't have started. So it's not like what I did was wrong. It's not that my name was dumb or that any of those things, building my website, registering my business, that those things were a waste. Because if I didn't do those things, I wouldn't be where I am today. So picking the wrong name, picking the wrong font, you have to do that sometimes.
Yeah. And I think this is like across all industries and across, not even just related to business, but just life in general, is to do, what's the quote? Like, do the best with what you have at the time, or however people say that. Is that what it is?
I think so.
Do your best with the knowledge you have at the time or whatever.
Yes.
So like you thought at that time that business name was going to serve you perfectly. And eventually, like for the time being, it did, because it grew you to the next stage.
Yeah.
So I think that making those mistakes in the beginning is really important. And people are like crippled by the fear of someone seeing them make a mistake or seeing them, have to rebrand. And it's not realistic to think that you can sit down, make a business plan and start it and just have it be perfect right out the gate.
No. And sometimes too, like, again, reframing how you look at failing in front of people or rebranding. I also have people, so I do a lot of Facebook Lives in my, like for my business, and I have a podcast and all those things. The first time I did it, I really sucked. Like sometimes I go back and watch my first ever Facebook Live just to remind myself of like how far I've come whenever I feel down on myself. And it's funny because I have people who have watched almost every single Facebook Live video I've done over the course of the last 2 years. And people note how significantly I've improved over time. And those are people who are like hiring me and paying me money to work with them, because people also want to see you be real. They want to see you be a human. People don't want to work with perfect, because if we feel like we're working with perfect, then we feel we have to be perfect. And let's be real, like perfect is unobtainable. And what is perfect? Because like what I would think is perfect is vastly different from what Becca would think is perfect. Like her idea of perfect calligraphy and my idea of perfect calligraphy are very different, right? And so it's about recognizing too that failing and making mistakes is totally part of the process. And I truly believe that failing is is a necessary key ingredient in building out your life and in building out success, again, whatever success is to you, and in building out your business. It would be like trying to make a cake and forgetting to put in flour. If you're making a gluten-free cake, then I'm not sure like what you would use as a substitute of flour. But the idea being that like failing and making mistakes is such a key ingredient to your overall success, that if you try your hardest to avoid failing and to avoid making mistakes, then you're literally avoiding succeeding, because you cannot grow without learning. And we learn the best and the most through trial and error. And even think about with calligraphy, like the reason you practice, because what do you call it? Not drills. Practice your drills. Like the reason you do drills and you do so many of them is because you're going to make mistakes. And so I want you to think, if you got into calligraphy knowing that you weren't really the best, or like you liked it, but you knew you want to improve, which is why you do the drills in the first place. So why is it that in this area of your life, you embrace the fact that you need to learn and that you're going to make mistakes and that you're going to grow, and where you started is not where you're going to end up? Like if you can accept that in one part of your life, you can accept that in all parts of your life. And that's why, again, it's asking yourself, what would you do if you were guaranteed success? Because it doesn't mean that you're not going to like make some mistakes along the way. It just means even what would you do if there was no guarantee of failure? Like when I say that, it's also, again, it's just meant to see, where are you limiting yourself because you're so scared of failing that you're not even starting? And that sucks. And you're actually going to do yourself more of a disservice. You're going to be like less happy overall, more stressed, more overwhelmed, and more like bitter and miserable to be around, because you know that in some way you could be living such a bigger, grander life, but you're not, because you're too scared to go after it. So you're going to just stay comfortable in the confines of your comfort zone. And like, that sucks. Because again, you could be like better than Becca for all we know. We don't know. And it's not about, again, it's not about being better than somebody. It's just about recognizing like, you don't know what your potential is, but for some reason you're already capping off your potential without even actually exploring its true depths. And so if anything, you get anything from today's video, it's just, again, you don't know who you can become. You don't know what it is that you can accomplish in life. You just have to be open to the possibility of those things and believe in yourself just like a little bit. Because again, you don't have to like fully believe in yourself. You just have to like believe in yourself a little bit, and then just make sure that you're tapping into that voice. When you think, oh, I can't do this thing, you tap into that little voice is like, but what if you can? But what if you can? And just really trying to hone in on that until that voice becomes like louder and you become like Becca, where you just, I'm sure, Becky, you still have that voice that is like not nice. But until you brace the fact where you're like, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I at least believe in my ability to figure it out along the way. I know that if I fall down, I know how to get back up. Like, I know that if I get punched in the face, so to say, like if life punches me in the face and I have a nosebleed, I know how to stop a nosebleed, and I know that my body will heal and get better. And so it's just recognizing, again, like you have all that you need. You just have to start doing, because that's how you're actually going to like learn and grow. And I went on a tangent there.
If you get punched in the face and you get that nosebleed and you're really struggling to get back up, just come back and listen to this video.
Yeah. Or ask for help too, right? Like, again, nobody is a self-made person. Like, even when you look at Becca and all of the stuff she does in her business, like Becca has a team of people that she has that allow her to do the work that it is that she did. And you didn't start with the team. You have to build up to the team, because also, like, if you had started with a team, you wouldn't have any idea what to tell them to do. You would have made even more mistakes. You would have wasted a lot of money. And so it's also, again, like, just start somewhere, start building and growing. And as you get bigger, that's too when you start to, again, you don't have to do it alone. And you're not even doing it alone. Like, that's why you come to Becca, for her to teach you and help you with calligraphy skills. And so know that if you do want to start a business, like, and it doesn't even have to be working with a business coach, but it can just be anybody, like anybody in your life who you can help, who can help you, or you can ask questions, or can give you direction or mentorship or strategy, whatever it is that you feel you need. There's also people out there who can help you do it. And there's no problem with asking. And in fact, like, none of us ever do anything alone. Like, we wouldn't have learned how to walk, talk, eat, or even go to the bathroom if someone hadn't taught us how to do it. And so it's the same thing with business. Like, you can learn how to run a business, and you can learn how to run a super successful business. You just got to look for some people to teach you and have encouragement and motivation, and most importantly, believe in yourself. Because think about when you watch a kid learn to walk, and like, I'm sure most of us has seen a child learn to walk. It's embarrassing for the kid. The kid's all like wobbly. They kind of seem drunk. They fall down all the time. They like hit their face sometimes on the corner of stuff. Yet if a child just gave up after falling down and having people laugh at them a few times, like, they wouldn't learn to walk. And so you learned to walk despite how embarrassing it was at the beginning, despite how many times you failed. As children, we inherently know that failure is a part of learning how to do something. And so we're willing to fail over and over and over again until it gets us to where we want. And again, it's the same thing in your life, and it's the same thing in business. Like, it's okay if you keep falling down. It's not about falling down. It's about getting back up, right? Like, I think it's like a Japanese proverb. It's like, fall down 7 times, get back up 8. It only ever matters how many times you get up. It does not matter how many times you fall down.
Smart. The Japanese, they're so smart.
They are.
Okay, so I have one more kind of like topic I just want to touch on before we hop off. And that is, like, I think a big part of artists in general not wanting to start businesses or not being able to start businesses is that they're constantly crippled by wanting to improve their actual art skills as opposed to learning how to start a business. It's like, I can't start a business until my art skill is like the absolute best it can be. And I just want to encourage people. And I was telling somebody about this last week that like, I am nowhere near a master calligrapher or even close to being the best calligrapher on Instagram or being better. Like you said, I guarantee you there are people in my Facebook groups who are better than me at calligraphy. But I at one point I said, "Okay, I'm good at calligraphy. I can teach it. Now it's time to start learning how to put it into a business and how to learn the business skills to combine all of those things together." And I see so many people who are amazing artists, but never take the time to invest in learning the business side of things, that they can't marry them together and build a business out of it. And they just really struggle with that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think parts of it are like, there's always different options. So bless you. One of your options can be even just like, you don't have to fully understand the business stuff. Like if you have the resources, you can hire a business coach or you can hire somebody to help you with the business stuff. So, but at the beginning, you should obviously try and figure things out yourself. And I think part of it is also recognizing that the more you push yourself to be visible, the better you're going to be. And so a lot of reasons why people don't want to start businesses is because ultimately they're scared of being seen. They're scared of like having to people see their work and judge their work on such a grand scale. It's one thing if you are just doing calligraphy for fun and for your friends. And it's another thing if you're actually, marketing and promoting yourself and having people pay you in exchange for your work. So sometimes that, again, it's that fear of being seen. And I want you to recognize that the more people see you, the better you're going to be. Like as a coach, like business coaching aside, like I had no idea how to start a business when I started my business. And that's part of the reason I became a business coach, was because I recognized how people had this skill and they wanted to be able to work with people, but they had no idea how to actually attract clients. So they could never use their skill to begin with. It's the same thing with calligraphy and starting a business. The more people start paying you money to do your work, the better you're going to get. And the more money you charge too, like that ups your game. Because when you're doing something for free, you're going to put effort into it and you're going to try and you're going to do a good job. But if someone's paying you like $2,000 to do something, like say someone's paying you $2,000 to make an ornament. And for the record, someone would pay $2,000 for a hand calligraphy ornament. That it's not absurd what I'm saying. It might be like abnormal, but it happens. If someone's paying you $2,000 to make them an ornament, you better believe that that's the best handwritten ornament that you're ever going to make, because there's something on the line. And sometimes too, that's the thing with like being an artist and wanting to hone your craft. Like what better way to hone your craft than to have this expectation of like, someone's paying me money. And it's not in like a fear crippling way, but it's like, so I have to show up and I am going to push myself outside my comfort zone and I'm going to try something different, or I'm going to do better than I would do if I was just doing it for free. Like we don't take things seriously when they're hobbies. And that's why people don't take sometimes like calligraphy or artist style things seriously, is because people see it as a hobby. But if you take something serious, like if you make something a business versus a hobby, you're going to improve like naturally, because you're taking it more seriously, because you're going to invest more money into being better as well. And again, if you make money, you have more money. Like you could hire Becca to be your personal one-on-one. I don't know if you actually offer this service, but like, if you make a whole bunch of money, you could hire Becca to be your like personal one-on-one teacher. And she like runs one-on-one workshops with you. She does not do that, but somebody out there does. I don't know, but like somebody out there would, right? So the idea too is if you're making money, you also have more money to invest in your craft. And again, if something's your job or your life and your livelihood, you take it more seriously than you do when it's just a hobby. So that's like one part of it. And the other, just also because you talked about, done is better than perfect. So it's in the same video. So I would also suggest if anyone likes Natalie Portman, she has a Harvard commencement speech. I think it's like 2012 or 20, whatever. Doesn't matter the year. If you look up Natalie Portman commencement speech Harvard in YouTube, you'll find the video, because she talks a lot about like good versus done just versus being perfect. When she was finishing up her time at Harvard, she became essentially crippled by her obsession with being perfect, and it caused her a lot of stress. So she talked about that in the video, but she also talks about this naiveness that she had. So like, at least in North America, lots of people have seen or heard of Black Swan. And Natalie Portman, I'm pretty sure she won an Oscar for that movie. And that movie won a lot of awards. And that movie really propelled her career, because before that, she hadn't necessarily always been seen as a super serious actress that could push herself that way. So Black Swan for Natalie Portman, like, really moved her career forward. And she talks about in the commencement speech how naiveness, like, we are often told, especially as women, we're told that being naive is actually a bad thing. But sometimes thinking that we're good enough to do something is more important than actually being good enough to do the thing, because you're going to rise to the occasion. And so she talks about how when she's being interviewed for her, or auditioning for the Black Swan, what they told her was, okay, like, you have to be like a really, really good dancer to play this part. Like, there's absolutely no way around it. Like, you have to excel at dance to play this part. And Natalie Portman thought, yeah, like, I used to dance when I was younger. Like, I'm a good dancer. And anything that I like don't know, I can learn. And so she said yes, even though in reality, she did not have the skill set at all to play that role. And if she'd actually known how much dance experience, and also if the producers knew how little dance experience she had, she wouldn't have gotten the part. But in reality, she killed that role. And yeah, she won a whole bunch of awards for that role. And even though she wasn't skilled enough to take the role on when she signed that contract, she became skilled enough. She stepped up to the plate and she realized, like, holy crap, yeah, like, I need to be at a 20 skill level. So she became a 20 skill level. And there's no way she would have pushed herself that much in dance if she had not gotten the role to begin with. And so again, it's that same thing with, oh, I want to hone my craft versus build a business. Sometimes being naive enough to think that, hey, I'm good enough, people will pay me for it. That's the very thing that you need to become good enough. Because again, if we're not challenged, what's the point of improving? And if you're and you want to compete with yourself, but when there's something else on the line, like when somebody else is paying you money, we just usually try harder when it's for someone else too. So again, if someone else has hired you and is paying you money to do something, you're going to become a better calligrapher, because it's going to force you to hone your craft even more than you would if it was just a hobby. So
I've always found that the jobs that I take on where I almost say no because they scare me are the ones where I really actually grow and do my best work. And so I would definitely tell people that, like, I completely wholeheartedly agree with everything you say, but as it relates to being a calligrapher or taking on art jobs, like, if the job scares you, do it. Because like you said, you're going to rise to the occasion. You're going to put in way more effort than you normally would for a job that is easy to you, and you're going to grow as an artist. And so that's one way that I continue honing my craft while also having the business and learning the business stuff. So both of those kind of work hand in hand for me.
Yeah, it's like you're going to rise to the occasion. And also I think too, it's knowing, like, I also, like you said, you take jobs that scare you and you say yes to them and you do them. And I do the same thing. Like, I take on clients sometimes where I'm like, a part of me is telling me that maybe, like, I'm not good enough to work with them. And so, there's parts of me where I'm like, okay. And then again, anytime I feel that way, that maybe I'm not good enough, that 100% means definitely I have to say yes to this project or working with this client. And every single time I'm blown away about how I almost didn't take on this client because I let my own insecurities come into play. And every time I, like, blow it out of the water with my clients. And I also push myself and I learn new skills in the process, because maybe they need help with something that's not in my, like, easy zone of genius, but now I get to learn this skill and I'm a better coach because of it. And so it doesn't matter what industry you're in either. Like, you want to take on projects and jobs that scare you, because also I'm sure jobs that you started, Becca, when you first started really scared you, and now you could do them in your sleep.
Yeah.
And so it's, you get better and your comfort zone expands and expands and expands and expands. And what used to seem so scary and hard is something now that you just do, like, without even contemplating it. And so again, you never know who you can become, and you never know what it is that you can do unless you open yourself up to the possibility of trying.
That's like a quotable. I'm going to take that quote and put it in a blog post, and we're going to end it there. I think that's like the perfect ending. And it's exactly 9:59. So that was exactly a 1 hour pep talk. I love it.
Good.
So thank you so much, Lana, for coming on here. I think this is going to be really, really inspirational for people. And maybe you have single-handedly started a bunch of new businesses today.
I hope so.
So I'm going to pop up your website back on the screen here. So if people want to find you, but is there anywhere better or other places that people should find you?
I would say like my website's okay. Like I don't, so if you want to know more about me, you can definitely go to lanadingwall.com. I would suggest though, finding me on Facebook or finding me on Instagram, especially if you resonated with like how I talk about stuff, because on Instagram and Facebook, which are both at Lana Dingwall, I do a lot of videos or I post a lot of posts. Like my Instagram is just all me essentially saying things that I'm saying today. My Facebook's all me saying things I'm saying today, but differently. So if you do like feel like you need some motivation or changing perspective, follow me on my social media. And I just love I love pumping people up. So it's fun.
We can tell that you love it and you're great at it. So it works. It works. You picked the right business.
Yeah. I want people to live their best life. So that's what I want for you. Whoever, even if I have never met you before, that's what I want for you.
Well, I think a lot of people will appreciate that. And I appreciate having you on here. So thanks again for being here, and I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, my pleasure. Bye.